Okay, so we had this funny NFL story come up over the weekend that just reminded me so much of the Vrabel Rossini saga that I just felt compelled to jump on and chat about it a little bit, and as well as just highlight. I want a few things I wanted to highlight going into this NFL season that I thought were interesting storylines. But this story is really what caught my eye this weekend. The headline from ESPN here: 49ers owner York contacted. Oh, sorry, I'm in the way. But this is the story here that kind of caught my eye this weekend, and so this is a headline from ESPN. ESPN's Tom Shad. 49ers owner York contacted prostitution ad 3 times before arrest. So if you hadn't heard of this story, you may be a bit shocked and surprised by that headline. What this is in regards to is indeed the San Francisco 49ers owner Jed York, billionaire owner, was arrested over the weekend, having been caught in a sort of sting style type operation thing in which he had been responding to and soliciting some type of services, presumably sexual, or I guess it is indeed sexual because they've used the prostitution term here, somewhere in Ohio, and was arrested on the spot. And the details are kind of hilarious. If that isn't just funny enough already. So let's just read a little bit here. Again from Tom Shad, ESPN. San Francisco 49ers owner Jed York used a pseudonym and responded multiple times to a fictitious ad for a prostitute prior to his arrest in Ohio over the weekend. Oh, can you see this? Yes, you can. Okay. Prior to his arrest in Ohio over the weekend, according to an incident report obtained Tuesday by ESPN. In the report, officers with the Mahoning Valley Law Enforcement Task Force wrote that New York identified himself as a man named Joe in response to the ad, which was posted by an undercover officer posing as a woman on a known prostitution website. So what's a known prostitution website? Can't say I'm super familiar with them. I'm trying to think of one that would be known, though. I mean, would that just be like Craigslist, probably? Or is there another? I mean, wasn't there one back in the day called like Backpage, Backpage.com, something? Maybe he's probably on one of those, right? New York area. New York. Sorry, this is just such a hilarious story. York contacted the undercover officer twice Saturday with no response before the undercover. So he was texting. He was getting no response and continuing to text. What's that called when you're getting ghosted, but you keep sending messages? And he was sending these messages to an undercover officer, which he did twice Saturday with no response before the undercover officer responded to a third message sent Sunday and offered to meet that morning in East Palestine, Ohio, according to the incident report. So he sent 2 messages, undercover officer responded to the third, and then offered to meet. Officers arrested York after he arrived at the agreed upon meeting location, the Wheat Hill mobile home community. Wait. Literally a trailer park. Wait, what? Officers arrested York after he arrived at the agreed upon meeting location, the Wheat Hill mobile home community. Literally sounds like something out of like The Simpsons or something. Like, with both the phone used to communicate with the fictitious prostitute and $160. So he showed up with $160, presumably for payment, which is rather low when you consider he's a billionaire. I mean, this is just so utterly ridiculous. If you're a billionaire, I have to believe if you're a billionaire, if this is something that you're after, whatever he's after, that there's a way that you can obtain it in total secrecy without taking any of these absurd risks. Like, I have to think there's something about this particular prostitute or environment that he was going to, trailer park, or whatever it was that she was offering that had to be very unique or special, or something that he was in particular interested in. because it just makes no sense otherwise. If all he's looking for is, you know, a rendezvous, I guess we could call it, then, you know, something he could easily find in San Francisco under the cover of secrecy, right? Like we just had, for example, the Kyle Shanahan story, the head coach of the Niners. By the way, the Niners are going through it right now. We just had Kyle Shanahan in this story where he was in this horrible car crash. Luckily, no one killed, but he was injured. A crash that left. Okay, so it was a crash between Shanahan's Tesla and another driver's SUV. A crash that left Shanahan with a concussion or broken left hand, a broken nose, 3 broken ribs, and 40 stitches above his right eye. So Shanahan got messed up in a car crash, right? This is just a few weeks ago. Or this happened maybe like a month ago or two. The crash happened on July 14th, right? We didn't know about it until like a couple weeks ago. It was literally kept secret for like 14, 15, 16 days or something like that, where we didn't hear about it. Somehow the people that the Niners have in place, whether it be in the police department, in the news, in the different news outlets in the city, they have the proper connections to like keep something like this, Shanahan's car crash, from coming out for 2 weeks or more, right? So obviously the owner of the 49ers, if he wants to have a rendezvous with a female in secret and have it not involve any of these risks that he's taken here that resulted in his arrest, obviously he would be able to do that, right? This seems like problem behavior, right? Like, because you presume he's flying, like you presume he lives in California, right? If he's the owner of the 49ers. I mean, I guess I don't know that to be true, but I'm going to make that assumption. And he's flying to the Wheat Hill, or he's flying to Ohio so he can go to the Wheat Hill mobile home. I mean, it's just such a random place. I mean, there wasn't some boondock trailer park closer than Ohio. Like, I mean, California is famous for its trailer parks out in the middle of nowhere, right? Like, you can go visit them in Grand Theft Auto, in the fake Los Santos or whatever it's called. That's where, one of the characters from GTA 5 he lives in one of these trailer parks, right? I can't remember his name. Oh, Trevor. Trevor in GTA 5 lives in one of those California trailer parks, right? That probably has a few different prostitutes apiece in each trailer park, right? But this guy's going to Ohio to the Wheat Hill mobile home community, which, by the way, when it's the Wheat Hill mobile home community, that almost sounds like it could be like senior living or something. I mean, this is just, it's so ridiculous. And only $160 too. You're a billionaire. That's the other thing. One thing that you notice about rich people, if you've ever worked in a place where they shop or you have experience being around like really, really wealthy people, they are hesitant to buy things that are less expensive, right? It's like this weird thing where like you think, like for people that have to manage their money and like not even necessarily like if you're poor or anything like that, but just you have to manage your money, right? You're not just wealthy where price tags don't matter. You are obviously always looking for the best deal, right? Like if you see like a low price, that's attractive, right? Assuming it's not just a total piece of crap. But like wealthy, super wealthy people, they're like put off by low price tags. Even if you ensure to them the quality of this product, even though it looks a bit different, is just as good as this one, they will opt to buy the more expensive one. It's totally counterintuitive, but it's totally true. Because they just have this idea in their head that if it's more expensive, that must mean it's better, and I can just like count on it more. Or like, I'm just not going to end up feeling stupid for buying it or something. Which still just makes even less sense, but it's just how they think. Like, they'll just opt for the more expensive thing, and then obviously in certain cases, it's just status. They just want to show they can afford the most expensive thing, but to be interested in meeting with a woman that's only charging $160, or I mean, I presume, and that's just assuming all the cash that was on him was intended to go to her. What if he had $20 in his pocket for a pack of smokes on the way home or something? You know what I mean? Like maybe he's only paying her 130, 120. We don't. So this was clearly a very This is on the low end of prostitutes, right? Like very, I mean, and again, I'm not super familiar with prostitute pricing, but like in my mind at least, to like in order to obtain the services of a prostitute that's not like, you know, one that's on the street in the hood that you like literally drive up to or something. Like if you're like a wealthy man obtaining the services of like an escort, let's say in Las Vegas, right? Where it's, you know, it's well known, I'd say, that people that's a pretty big industry in Las Vegas, right? Like I'm pretty sure there's hotels where you can have like you can have your escort brought up with like a private elevator. Which again, it's just, why is this guy going to Ohio? Like he could just go to Las Vegas. But anyways, those in those cases, I'm pretty sure it's upwards of $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 a night, right? For like anything that you would consider like a and this is, it's hard to talk about, but like a quality experience, right? Like so it's just it makes it infinitely more odd, given that he's a billionaire, that he's at the Wheat Hill mobile home community paying $160, you know, in Ohio of all places too. Anyways, moving on here with the story. York was charged with 2 misdemeanors: engaging in prostitution and possession of criminal tools. Huh? Wait, what? York was charged with 2 misdemeanors: engaging in prostitution, okay, obviously, and possession of criminal tools? Wait, what could that mean? Criminal tools. That sends your mind in so many different places. Like, just forget about like the sexual part of it, right? Like he's there for prostitution, and then there's this possession of criminal tools thing. Would that be, I mean, you just think like, is that like some straps or something that they're using to do some weird, again, that lends itself to, is she offering some weird particular service that he was interested in? But again, if it's just like tying up and whatever, you'd have to think you could find that if you're a billionaire, if closer to home. I mean, it's California. Why do we have to go to Ohio to get this? Criminal tools, though, that is odd. The only other place my mind goes would be like, was he planning to harm her in some way? Like, it's very weird, and is that because that would explain why he would be meeting someone in Ohio so far away from where he lives, right? And the cash, why he would be willing to pay such a little amount, is because he never actually intended to like indulge in that. He was actually going to like harm. This is just obviously a wild theory, but I'm just trying to think of what criminal tools would mean. And then you have to also think like, these billionaires, even though clearly this Ohio Police Department didn't give a crap about this dude's reputation and was willing to just like charge him, and you know, they weren't willing to like let him off easy, I guess, or let him off the hook, as rich people often have done for them, right? But they did, like, possession of criminal tools. That's one of those charges that like reeks of like, did they maybe downsize a charge, like did they possibly dampen a charge a bit, or like oh God, what's the word I'm looking for? Did they reduce something from when they were originally thinking, all right, we're going to charge him with possession of a weapon or a possession of a firearm, and instead they just made it this lesser charge. Like they gave him the you know, they gave him the little sort of clemency of, we'll just charge you with possession of criminal tools, so no one knows you actually brought a gun to this thing too, right? Like, we'll at least do you that solid, even though this is gonna be a big story that's gonna, you know, soil your reputation. Maybe that was like the solid that they did for him or something, and they're like, who knows? Maybe he just like bribed them. Like, it's a billionaire. This possession of criminal tools thing is very odd. York ultimately pleaded no contest, paid $1,150 in fines, and was sentenced to 1 day in jail for each charge, with 1 day already considered to be served. I mean, that seems fine. Like I have no interest in this guy paying some huge penalty, right? Like a fine seems reasonable for prostitution, unless of course it did appear like he was going there to harm her, in which case I don't know, maybe this guy does need to be locked up for a little while or something, or at least, you know, given some bit of a harsher penalty, or sent some kind of message. I mean, if that is the case, again, we don't know because they just give us this very vague thing. possession of criminal tools. York's attorney has not responded to multiple messages from ESPN. 49ers said in a statement they would have no comment. I don't expect the 49ers to. I mean, the thing is, this is ultimately the owner, right? So he is treated a little bit differently. Like, it's his organization, so he can just tell them not to have comment on it. That's not really all that surprising or offensive. Okay, so this is kind of... The incident is cast a national spotlight on the small rural town of East Palestine, which is a short drive from York's hometown of Youngstown. Oh, so there's the Ohio connection. Short drive from York's hometown of Youngstown. The news of this arrest in our quiet community is just as shocking to us as to the rest of you. I mean, come on. Let's not jump on Wheat Hill here, right? They're just running a trailer park. But man, this season just looks like it's just starting out with a bit of a thud for the Niners. I mean, yeah, this Shanahan car crash incident, right? Which was just a big story. They didn't want to come out, clearly, because they kept it secret for 2 weeks before it reached the actual press. Then you have, this past weekend, the owner arrested for prostitution, right? And they have to open the season in Australia against the Rams, that I think for most people are probably the Super Bowl favorites. By the way, that game's on Netflix at 8:35 p.m. on Thursday, September 10th. So they have to go to Australia with all of this looming over their head and play the Rams in a game on foreign soil, right? So it's just a really, really sort of odd, chaotic start to the season for the Niners. And yes, the owner didn't do him any favors getting caught up in this. So anyways, the other thing I wanted to jump to was this, the Browns having named Deshaun Watson the starting quarterback. And so obviously everyone's just kind of sick of Deshaun Watson, and I don't blame people. You know, he went through the thing where he was, you know, at the massage parlors or whatever, getting massages, and then they had accused him of assault, or, you know, there was a number of ladies that accused him of assault while soliciting a massage from them. So he had that whole saga, and he was suspended for like a season, and then he tore his ACL, and then so he's just been a black cloud. Not to mention they had, you know, this all happened after he signed a $250 million contract, at the time the biggest contract, fully guaranteed. So, and I think it was the only contract that's ever been like fully guaranteed. So then you have all the stuff, you know, that kept him out for 2.5, 3 seasons or whatever it was. And he's just been a stink bomb for the Browns, and it's really no surprise that it's all gone down, you know, in Cleveland, because the Browns have just always been just a total train wreck, dumpster fire franchise. But anyways, I thought this was somewhat interesting that they named him the starter, just because, okay, well, let's see if he has anything left, for one. I doubt he does, but you never know. I mean, don't forget, he was an extremely talented player at one point, and carried the Texans to whatever they did under Bill O'Brien. So up to this point, he had never really made any statements that were like that were very conciliatory. I mean, maybe he had a couple of times, but I had never heard anything very conciliatory or, you know, remotely apologetic about just letting down the fans, right? Like, forget about don't forget about, but setting aside the allegations against him from the women at the massage parlors, which I'm pretty sure he denies in all cases, right? And I'm not sure was ever actually officially charged or found guilty in any of those, right? So, which is worth noting. But you never really heard anything in along the lines of apologies to the fans for having been out for so long due to these sort of disciplinary issues. Which I felt like was somewhat warranted, right? Because the fans are the ones at the end of the day that are like, that give you the ability to have this massive contract. They're the ones that you're ultimately supposed to be performing for, that you're letting down. So something contrite, something, you know, apologetic to the fans, I felt like would, even if you're not going to say, yeah, I was assaulting all those women at the massage parlors, my bad. Just something along the lines of like, I'm sorry I let the fans down by not being able to play, right? Like something like that. I don't know. I never really heard anything that I was that satisfied with from him in terms of that. Not that I really was all that offended by him, anyways, right? But I think that was something maybe the Cleveland fans wanted to hear, and I thought it was interesting that when he was named the starter this past weekend, that he did sort of make somewhat of a statement like that, and I think most people kind of missed it because, like, who's watching Cleveland Browns press conferences? But I caught this article and I read his statement. I thought it was a decent statement, right? Like, you can hate the guy all you want, you probably have great reason to, but he is going to be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. So if you're a fan of the Cleveland Browns and you want to be able to get on board with the team in the season, I feel like if you read this statement, you heard this statement, and you're a reasonable person, you could say, okay, I'm willing to accept him as the quarterback for the season. And maybe I don't love the guy, but it seems like he's trying to be on the straight and narrow. He's trying to put that stuff behind him. And at least from what we can tell by what we see during the opportunities we have the chance to see it and hear it, he appears to have his head in the right place, at least now, right? That doesn't mean you have to totally forgive him for everything, but that maybe it's time to allow Deshaun Watson back under the tent in terms of not making him a complete ostrich, when he's going to be the starting quarterback. So this was his statement. I thought I was going to get a little different response, but I think my emotions got the best of me. My comments wasn't intending to go at any of the fans around the city, because there's been a lot of great fans that have been supporting me, and I know the frustration. This organization has put a lot of investment in coming to get me back in 22. Things haven't been going in the right direction that we thought it was. A lot of injuries, a lot of time off, and not putting the best football in my foot forward. I understand the frustration. I understand everything that kind of goes into that. And moving forward, I just want to focus on football and making sure that I'm putting the best product out there, having the best ability, because I thrive off the energy. I thrive off the energy of the fans. I thrive off the energy of the community. I thrive off all that stuff. So, I mean, it's not like he's not sitting there saying, I'm guilty of all of it and I'm so sorry. But I think at the end of the day, like, if you're just a fan of the Browns, like, you have to... Or, unless you're just going to abandon your team and not root for them. If you want to sit there and root for them every week and feel decent about it and not just, like, hate what you're seeing, I felt like this statement was a decent extension of the palm by Deshaun Watson towards the fans, where they can say, okay, you can even be our quarterback for this season. That's fine. And we can, at least for the time being, forgive you and accept you, right? Because otherwise, like, I mean, what do all of us expect from the Browns this season? For them to be terrible, right? But how are you ever going to get out of this? Like, I suppose you could just cut Deshaun Watson, right? But they owe him all this money. So you either pay him to be there or don't, and they have him and Shedeur Sanders. So at least for this season, it's not, it doesn't look great, I would agree. But if this is the guy that gives you the best chance, unless you just want it to be painful and ugly all year, I feel like you got to try to find a way to get on board with it. And I think he's giving you that olive branch in a way with this statement. So I feel like that was worth, bringing up. I really don't care about the Browns. I do get sick of seeing them terrible every single year and never be able to figure anything out. It makes no sense to me. I just don't understand how they can be that bad all the time. And don't forget, they just traded Myles Garrett to the Rams as well, too. So, like, they don't have Myles Garrett, and they have Deshaun Watson in quarterback. So it's just like, man. I just feel so bad for Browns fans. I don't understand how there are any left. I really don't. It blows my mind that people show up to that stadium. It blows my mind. Who goes to those games? Who pays for those tickets? It's insane to me. You're paying for Browns. I don't know. Anyways, so this was the other story that I wanted to highlight here, which I was pretty confident most people wouldn't have seen yet, just because this is the type of thing that really slips through the cracks. So from ESPN here again, study, at least 25% of NFL players in sample had CTE, which CTE is obviously chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is the degenerative brain disease that has been found and continues to be found in deceased former players, deceased former NFL players, and other, I presume other athletes that sustained chronic minor head traumas. And so there was a study that was published Tuesday by the British Medical Journal focused on how common chronic traumatic encephalopathy might be among NFL players. What it found is that of the 878 players who appeared in at least one NFL game and died, and what it found is that of the 878 players who appeared in at least one NFL game and died in that 6-year period, of those, at least 25% had CTE. Yeah, so this was deaths during a 6-year period of people who had during their lifetime played in at least one NFL game, right? Of those people, 25% had CTE. Pretty staggering, 1 in 4, right? CTE can be diagnosed only after death, so most research has depended on brains donated by players or their families. This study drew on samples donated between 2008 and 2021, 93% of which had been diagnosed with CTE, then narrowed the samples based on when donations were highest and factored in demographic data and information from death certificates. The estimate of 25% is on the low end, said Daniel Danishvar, the study's lead author. The study found that the maximum possible prevalence of CTE was around 97%, but the true rate is somewhere in the middle. The study is a sobering reminder that football carries real risks, and those risks can have lasting consequences for players and their families, the NFLPA said in a statement to ESPN. It also reinforces one of the NFLPA's core priorities, improving player safety and supporting players throughout their lives, both during and after their careers. So one reason I thought this was interesting is because one thing you see a lot of these days in the NFL is you see them implementing different ways to try to reduce head injuries, right? Like you see players wearing those crowns on their helmets, those weird, big, poopy things. And then also you see the refs making more calls on hits that 20 years ago would have been totally fine. They never would have made a call on. Now they'll make a call on it, and it's like improper hit to the head or whatever it is, right? The reason they're doing that is because the NFL knows that this is a big issue, right? 1 in 4 players out of 900 or so former players that have played in at least one game that died, 1 in 4 had CTE. The reason CTE is such a problem, or such a bad thing, right, is because it just creates such a terrible quality of life after you leave football, right? Like let's see. So there are several treatable conditions that are tied to head injuries, including sleep apnea, high blood pressure, tinnitus, depression, anxiety, low testosterone, and chronic pain. But obviously the worst thing is the onsets or CTE, the link between CTE and dementia, right? Finding more than 90% of samples of the most advanced stage of CTE, stage 4, were also diagnosed with dementia, right? So if you have the CTE thing going on, you're almost certainly getting dementia later on in life, which is just sad, right? Like these guys are entertaining us every weekend, and they just, once they're out of the league, they just deteriorate, rot, their brains just sort of turn to mush. It's just, I don't know. And again, it's most people probably don't really care, right? They got paid tons of money. But I just think that these studies are really important because the people should at least be able to know, right? Like if you want to go play football, fine. I know I really enjoyed playing it when I was a kid, but I also know that the head injuries were the scariest part, and the only thing that really ever made you think maybe I don't want to play this game was the head injuries, right? Like I've gotten a ton of injuries in my life, most of which I literally don't even think about, right? Like I just deal with it. You ice it, you go to bed, you wake up, it's a little better the next day. Before long, you're not noticing it anymore. Head injuries are ones that stick with you. Like they're scary. You forget things. The headaches are terrible, right? Like I just remember just playing middle school football, having taken a bad hit one time. Got my bell rung, as they say, and I remember not remembering, right? Like what I remember is there being a large chunk of the game missing from my memory, and then I also have this little memory of my dad and like a few other people around me asking me if I knew my name and what I had for dinner last night, and a bunch of the questions I knew my name, but a bunch of the other questions I couldn't answer. Like my bell was so rung at the moment, I couldn't think straight. and I couldn't bring up these answers, right? So it was a scary moment, like, and it wasn't fun. It was like, it was one of the few injuries that, like, the next time I went on the field, I was thinking about that, like, I don't want this to happen again. And like, I've had other injuries. I've blown out my knee. As soon as I was ready to run again or whatever, I was back on my knee, like screwing around. Like, I wasn't thinking about it, right? But yeah, those head injuries are just really scary, and there's a reason for it. Obviously, your brain's probably, your brain or your heart are obviously your most important parts of your body. And so, if this is something that's going to turn your brain into a sponge later on in life that's hardly usable, I just feel like the players should be made fully aware of it, right? And I think even at the young ages too, the kids that are getting into football that are, building their dreams around going to the NFL or whatever it is, and that's a journey that, if you're going to go to the NFL, that's a journey that starts when you're very young, right? At least in most cases. There just needs to be a lot more education about CTE, because like, this is a real thing. If you're playing football, you got a 1 in 4 chance of having this, something that can lead to dementia later on in life, or low testosterone, night sweats, apnea, all this crap, right? That no one wants to deal with. And these are low prices to pay to have an NFL career, right? Sleep apnea, high blood pressure, tinnitus. I would probably gladly have all these symptoms if I got to have an NFL career. But you should at least have that information before you're going into it, right? The dementia is the one that I probably wouldn't be interested in. If someone told me before my NFL career that all the hits that you're going to take cumulatively throughout this career are going to lead to you having dementia by the time you're 50, 60 years old, I'm not sure I'd be interested in that, right? It's just, and there have been players that have opted out of that. You look at, there was a young man, I think his name was maybe Patrick Borland, a few years back, that was a stud linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers. And he just decided to retire at the age of like 23, 24, because he didn't feel like dealing with the head injuries. And how can you blame him? If you're a linebacker, that's your job is to like spear your head into things over and over. Like, you're gonna get CTE if you're a linebacker. So yeah, it's interesting. It's, the NFL doesn't want this. They don't want players to be more educated, because then you are going to have more linebackers, DNs, whatever, that are going to say, screw this. Like, I don't want to have my head smashed in if I'm going to end up with dementia later on in life. The NFL doesn't want players to be informed in the way they really should be, because it's going to cause more players to opt out of playing the game. The NFL wants as much top-end talent as it can get coming to the NFL to play. They don't want it going to the NBA. They don't want it going to MLB. They want it to come into the NFL, so the NFL can stay on top. And when you have, work hazards, job hazards like potential CTE, that can become an issue. This has always been a thorn in the side of the NFL. They hate it. They hate the issue of CTE. They wish they just didn't have to deal with it, but they do. And good on British Medical Journal for publishing, this type of thing, because this is useful information for people actually participating in the game. Anyways, just thought I'd bring that up. Interesting schedule coming week 1. We start with New England and Seattle on September 9th, the Wednesday, and that's up in Seattle, obviously a rematch of the Super Bowl. So, great way to kick the season off. I love how the NFL does that with their schedule, having the Super Bowl rematch the first game. And then week 1's got some decent matchups to it. Obviously, the San Francisco-LA matchup, that's a divisional in Australia too, and the Australians are mad about football, so like rabid, so they love it. So that's, I presume that stadium's going to be packed, and that's going to be a really cool game. It's on a cricket ground too, so that'll be cool. I wonder if that's the first game played in NFL game played on a cricket ground. Has to be, right? And then we have some other matchups here week 1. Look forward to Dallas, New York, right? Cowboys, Giants, week 1. And that is NBC on Sunday night, 8:20 game. So that's going to be a great game. What else did we have here that I had my eye on? Because week 1 really isn't all that good. The Dallas, New York game is really Denver, Kansas City. You have both starting quarterbacks coming back from injury. Obviously, Bo Nix couldn't play in the playoff game last year due to the ankle injuries he sustained against, I think it was the Bills. Couldn't play against the Patriots, so they had to play Stidham. They lost to the Patriots. Kansas City obviously lost Patrick Mahomes to a ACL. And then I think the next guy that came in, was it Minshew? I think he tore his ACL as well. Big year for Mahomes. He is sort of getting on that other side of 30. So, yeah, not going to be too many years left, although they do play a lot later than they used to. So, interesting year for the Chiefs. I mean, they really just kind of struggled last year. They just felt like they could never really get it going, right? Like we'd always felt like they were going to start to figure it out and then pick up the pace, but they just kind of never did. And then Mahomes went down, and that was that. And it was just sort of the year from hell for them last year. So, having been such a strong, and over the last decade, such a strong franchise, and having had the Super Bowl success and having the franchise quarterback, bouncing back from a tough year, that can be one of the toughest things to do. So I definitely think this is a big year for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, showing that they can, have an off year and come back next year and still be the same team that they were previous. We will keep our eyes on the news, and maybe there'll be some more juicy details in this Jed York story. I kind of doubt it. I feel like this is kind of wrapped up. He arrested, paid his fine, and that's that. And so we just got to get to these games here. College football, I think, next week, and then NFL the week after that. Yeah. So nice talking with y'all. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back soon.